Hey everyone, so I've decided I'm going to start doing some build showcases. So I figured I'd ask some people in the club, what's a good place to start? A lot of people wanted to see Li Guang, so figured why not start with Li Guang? I'm very big on her. I know some of the tier lists, things like that, don't rate her particularly high. She's not, not rated poorly, not bad, not amazing though. I'm pretty big on her. I don't think she's like game breaking. I don't think she's like so good or what to include in the list. She's just a really good versatile unit, and yeah, she has really good practical uses in a lot of places. So I'll start off going over her base stats. So she's got 11.8k HP, level 60. That's pretty decent. About 1100 attack is a little bit on the lower side, but not too bad. Defense 860 is surprisingly high. 106 speed is fantastic. That's tied with your Claras and Unuses and the likes. So yeah, super great with like Windwalker or something like that, or a speed lead. So you see in the Ascension, she gets 70 attack. It's good. The HP is a bit weird, but I guess it does help overall. Can complain about an extra 1000 health. It's pretty good. Again, HP. I feel like this is a little bit. Yeah, this is a bit of a hindrance. Like, just this could be anything damagey or speed or anything like that. Be great, but that does make up for it with 15% attack here and 15% crit rate, which is honestly makes building her a lot easier. I use her in quite a lot of things, so I'm gonna lean very heavily towards maximum abilities. However, I do think that she does gain a lot compared to a lot of other generic fighters where it's just scaling damage. She actually does gain a lot of obviously cooldown reduction on an AP push that's a nuke as well. Is it's phenomenal. I can't emphasize that enough. This being a strip and single target damage, it's really high single target damage, a mediocre strip, but it's a strip on a high single target damage. It's fantastic. Decreasing cooldown on that's fantastic. And the AP push on an A1, I like using this a lot. It's probably better. I'm probably using it a little more often than I should, when I should just be using, cycling the A3, A2, A1, and then just looping that. But I like to just cycle her turns really quickly by just pushing at A1. This can influence some of the ways you build her, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So next up, down a resonance path. I personally really like the idea of just going kind of high into the attack, but also I really do like going HP and scaling like targeted constraints. This is very generic, kind of utility-based esper. The targeted constraints into crisis response, into hasty action. It's just accuracy, damage, and speed. What more could you want? I, however, am also moving towards... This is just I'd already put the resonance in and forgot to reset it when they did the resonance tree changes. But yeah, I do still like the idea of... I like building her a bit more damage-oriented just because I use her in PvP to nuke specific espers sometimes. She's really great for that. Yeah, something like this would be strong. I think prioritizing these as your first 3 skill points here is really good. If you want to go damage, you could definitely go for something down this route, like 1, 2, 3. That's also really strong. That's going to help her a lot. And kind of some flexibility between those there. The Ascension's pretty flexible for her. This is good as well because you're going to be cycling through your abilities so fast. It all works really well. But overall, I think these 3 here are priority, and then probably go for these 2 next. One of the biggest use cases for Li Guang, for my, I guess, personal use anyways, has been PvP when I'm dealing with particularly Ollie comps. It comes up a lot. Ollie is the bane of my existence because what he does is, generally speaking, an unfair thing. He keeps somebody alive when it's not his turn. So Li Guang, being the good typing into him, makes it really easy as well as an AP pusher. With one button, you can AP push your entire team. You can then nuke an Ollie most of the time. This will do kind of at least about 2/3 to 3/4 of Ollie's HP based on the way that I have her built currently. And then I will then use, another 2 cleavers, and then that way I can make sure that I'm not proccing Ollie's passive. So very, very good for that. Very good for Hollow in that same use case there. Versing Ollie teams in particular, or teams where you just want to cycle really fast. You just want to outspeed and just chip away damage really fast. They're really, really good for that. You can run Li Guang and Sander. They're both phenomenal for that. I've used her a lot actually as well in the new Sentinel Hunt. My scores haven't been the best. I mean, I'm currently 18. This is a pretty, as you can see, I did a pretty poor run here. Having the flexibility, I'm lucky in that I have, obviously, Dahlia is free. I have an Asenath as well and a Li Guang, so I like to split those up so that way I can run a good split of AP pushes. So she's super useful for that, because getting to outspeed the boss in this situation where you need to get your slower DPS espers push up just that little bit so they can take their turn before the boss just potentially nukes one of them. At least getting a round of attacks through there is really important. So that's why I rate her very, very highly for Dark Star Lords. Lastly, touching on Last of the Trials, she's really, really good in most of the Desolate Lands, actually. This is something that I've kind of slept on. I've stopped doing Desolate Lands for a while now. But yeah, so she shines in a lot of these. Same thing with Sander, because she can churn through turns so fast. She can clear buffs off of bosses with her A2. She can AP push her entire team with her A3, which that's really important in pretty much all the fights, is taking extra turns, getting all your other espers to cycle through their abilities a lot faster, and then in turn getting more use on what you're trying to do. I wouldn't use her in the Shadow Fire, the Chronos Relic one, because she doesn't have any AoE and she's bad typing, so I wouldn't recommend that. But for the other two, she's fantastic. I like her a lot there. And lastly, now touching on the relics, I've been tinkering with these quite a lot. This is not my ideal set for her, but this is just kind of what I've got, because I like to have all the espers that I'm using for any one particular thing. I like to have at least a good gear set on them. So similar to Sander, there's a lot of contention for what you're trying to prioritize. You're trying to prioritize a lot of damage because she's a very quick fighter esper. That's what you want to go for, right? She has really good. She has fairly good scalings on her ability, so it's nothing amazing, but it's still pretty good high quality stuff. So you're trying to push a bit more extra damage where you can. And the best way to scale damage is crit. So I think it's really important to run a crit damage circle. This is actually quite a strong one for her, which I think this relic is actually the reason why I ended up going War Machine here. So I've prioritized crit damage circle. Now there's kind of a threshold that I'd recommend in order to get to a crit damage circle. I would recommend, if you can get up to 70% crit, I feel like that's a really good threshold where if I can get 70% crit, I'm happy to run this crit damage circle. If I'm below 70% crit, if I'm at 50% crit or something like that, it's very inefficient to run a crit damage circle. You'd just be better off running an attack bonus circle. I wouldn't recommend using a crit rate circle. You can actually scale a lot of crit rate from the Fiery 2 set here, and you can get a lot of crit rate sub stats. So it's fairly attainable, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're looking to roll your relics up. Again, yeah, attack bonus here, attack bonus, crit rate, speed. These are kind of the three things you're going to be looking for on all your relic substats. Attack bonus interchangeable with crit damage. Crit damage does scale a little bit better, but if you have too much crit damage and not enough attack bonus, it's going to be worse scaling, so you want a little bit of both. There is certain thresholds to meet. Now this is a pretty whatever relic overall. As you can see, it's got defense bonus and resist, but like I was saying, these are just relics that aren't the best stuff that I have in this set, but there's something that's just good enough that I can just leave it on there and just chuck her in and she's good to go. Now for Li Guang, because I like using her in PvP a lot, I have prioritized speed quite heavily on this. So you'll see like speed, I rolled +2 there. There was a speed rolled once here. This one doesn't actually have speed, but it's just rolled a bunch of crit. So that's always nice. The accuracy is incidental. It doesn't really matter for Li Guang. It only affects her A2. So that's something to keep in mind. Unlike Sander, she's a bit more forgiving. You don't need to try to get at least triple mods on your relic sets. 2 mods is fine, so long as you can try to push up to, kind of around 70% crit. This Fiery is pretty disgusting. A crit damage, attack bonus, and then double speed roll again. This was a fairly whatever relic that I've had for months now. I've just kept around, one of the few elite relics that I have left. But yeah, it's got speed, it's got attack bonus, it's got a crit damage, both of these leveled up, and it's speed main. Fantastic. So just to touch on things again, if you can't get your crit rate to at least 70%, I wouldn't worry about going for a crit damage circle. It's fine to just run attack bonus, And then I'll personally run speed just because you want to get that AP push sooner rather than later with her A3. Gets her to cycle through a lot more. It's going to be a lot more impactful for your team overall. For alternatives, you could look at going a Windwalker set. That's something that I've done for a while. I was swapping her relics out with Sanders straight up. I think if you're going to go a Windwalker set, it's also really, really good. That's better for more PvP oriented, where you can then cycle through, use her as an AP pusher alongside a Dahlia, and then that way you can have all your fastest relics on your Dahlia to pump your team to try to outspeed your opponent, especially if you're on like an Ollie main rather than a tier. That way you don't have to worry about having this awkward overlap of having a speed lead who has an inconsistent AP push with our A3. If you have the Ollie, you can go for the Ollie, Li Guang, Dahlia, and then 2 cleavers from that point, or you could run even another pusher. You could run an Asenath, you could run another faster Nuka to deal with like hides, donors, so you could run like an Ophelia, a Tangyun to deal with donors and the likes. You could run Sander to deal with hides, things like that. There's a lot of flexibility you can run there because she is an AP pusher. I wouldn't really look at using any other set here. I suppose you can go Hammer of Thor as well. Hammer of Thor and War Machine are effectively interchangeable. It's just that War Machine, typically more people are going to have better sets of War Machine because it drops from Kronos, and Kronos historically has been a lot easier to farm, so that's kind of priority. Whereas if you're going Hammer of Thor for absolute min-max, Hammer of Thor is better in a perfect world than War Machine, but they're very, very similar up to that point, so it's not too important. Her abilities are already such low cooldown that I wouldn't ever worry about running Ocean Waves. She doesn't gain much from like Astral Witchcraft. Tyranny, again, she's all single target and the rest are kind of irrelevant. You could argue running Hades and building her more of a bruiser, but I don't really think that's the way to go. Her base stats don't lend her well to being a bruiser. She wants to be that fast fighter that she is. Now for her 2 set, lastly, I'm running Fiery because it helps me get to, in this case, 90% crit rate with 130 crit damage. It's really strong. It's really good. I'm a big fan of Fiery just because it's something that it gives a lot of base stats, but doesn't give an additional extra thing. Like Sword Avatara or like the Adamantine are good examples of this, where they give something completely extra that doesn't affect your stats. So they're really good for espers, which are built specifically to utilize that. Since I'm just going for, I plan to have the initiative anyways, Sword Avatara doesn't matter. If they get a turn, I've lost anyways, so I'm just going Incandescence to just push as much crit as possible to try and nuke as much as possible. Apollo's Bow is an option you could consider, but again, accuracy doesn't really matter because her A2 is the only ability that is affected by it, and even then, it's a fairly unreliable strip. You could run this if you're looking to use it on Sentinel Hunt and you want to use her to strip his immunity. You can use that. I've used her on my second team for that for a little while. If I don't get through all 7 turns on my first team, she can be really, really clutch for that. Sword Avatara is another great option if you plan on running speed cleave defense for Point War. Having her A1 be able to push her own AP. I've seen this happen. I think Daddy Free to Play actually recently made a video showcasing this, where if your opponent goes first and they use, say, a typical speed cleave, they go Dahlia and then their tier A3 is your team. You have a chance to counterattack with Avatara, push your AP by 15%, which is almost guaranteed to push her up to next anyways, and then immediately can AP up your team by 15%. So it can be a huge swing to immediately just turn the tides there. It's super duper strong, but I don't really use her in my Point War defense. I've got a disgusting tank comp, so I'm chilling there. And lastly, to touch on, I suppose the Light Above is an option as well if you want to build something a little bit more creative. You could potentially, if you're going down that bruiser route, I would still think Sword Avatara is going to be better in that situation, but something worth considering if you run like a Hades main set and then Light Above, just so she doesn't get hard controlled early on, and then she can start cycling her turns very quickly with her A3 and her A1. But I don't think that's the way I'd want to build her. I'd definitely either be going the speedy route, either with War Machine if you've got good War Machine speed substats, or I would run just the Windwalker with good damage rolls. So anyways, that pretty much wraps it up. Li Guang is fantastic. Absolutely recommend building her if you haven't already. If you've got her and haven't built her, I think she is criminally underrated. She just is super versatile in so many things. And she's fairly easy to build because you don't need to worry about any accuracy. It's just damage and speed, all you need, all day, every day. So anyways, that'll wrap it up. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch us next time.